Radhe Radhe. Today is Saturday, 11th February 2023, and Mummy and I are here for our recap video of today's Bhagavad Gita recitation session. The final one, in fact, in our chapter 2 journey before we proceed ahead. And so we'll present to you a rendition of the 7 verses we covered today, starting with chapter 2, verse 66, and have a little bit of summary and explanation, and listen to more recitation as well.
Radhe Radhe.
We have the cover slide up, as I mentioned, chapter 2, verse 66 onwards, all the way through chapter 2, verse 72. Let's hear one round of recitation for all those verses.
Chapter 2, verse 66. Nasti buddhir ayuktasya na chayuktasya bhavana na cha bhavayata shantihi ashantasya kutah sukham indriyanam hi charatam yanmano nu vidhiyate tadasya harati prajnam vayurnavam ivambhasi tasmadyasya mahabaho nigrihitani sarvashah indriyanindriyarthebhyah tasya prajna pratisthita ya nisha sarvabhutanam tasyam jagarti sanyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato munehe apuryamanam achala pratishtham samudram apah pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashantim apnoti na kamakami vihaya kamane sarvan pumanscharati nisprihaha nirmamo nirahankaraha sashantim adhigacchati esha brahmi sthitif partha nainam prapya vimuhyati sthitva syam antakalepi brahma nirvanam richati. So let's see one word for each verse. For verse number 66, let's look at the word ayuktasya. Yukt means united, and when we put a in front, that means it becomes opposite. It becomes not united. From verse 67, let's look at word anu vidhiyate. Now here, this is a different word. Anu vidhiyate means at every step you are constantly engaged. From verse number 68, let's look at the word nigrihitani. That means restrained. Verse number 69, most of the words you all should be knowing. So let's look at again very important words. Sanyami. Sanyami means self-controlled. Verse number 70, let's see. Apuryamanam. Apuryamanam means filled from all sides. Verse number 71 has 3 very important words. So we will look at all of them. One is nisprihaha, that means free from hankering. Nirmamaha, that means without a sense of proprietorship. And nirahankaraha, that means without egoism. And verse number 72, So, very important word, Brahmi Sthiti. That means state of God realization. So that is how we end chapter 2, whereby we learn all the knowledge and Krishna teaches us how to get into the state of God realization. Over to you, Gagan.
Yeah, thank you, Mummy. Lots to learn here in these concluding verses for chapter 2. Now we'll look at a quick summary of all these 7 verses. So chapter 2, verse 66, the catchphrase here as a question is unity for the undisciplined. We do know the answer, or we hear it from Sri Krishna himself, that of course, if there is no discipline, there is no possibility of union with God, and then no peace or happiness. Swamiji uses a very good play on words here with no, where KNOW sounds the same as NO, no. So I forget, I believe that might be called a homonym. So KNOW first, no God, no peace. So knowing God, recognizing God, you'll also be able to have peace. No NO, no God, no peace. If you do not have God with you, there is no unity, then there is no peace. Swamiji also quotes from the scriptures a story of the bee and the lotus flower, and how the bee, is very attracted to the lotus flower, just like we chase the objects of our senses and are just continuing, even though each day gets closer and closer towards death. You can go back and read that story of the bee and the lotus flower, but it really helps us understand that we need to not be engrossed in the pleasures of the senses. Chapter 2, verse 67, catchphrase here is chart your course. We hear from Sri Krishna that a strong wind can, knock out that charted course or direction of a boat. So it's important for us to have our strength in that direction and not be swayed by what the senses take us away to. Swamiji continues from the scriptures with his commentary about not just the bee and the lotus flower, but also 4 other similar situations: the elephant attracted to the touch of another elephant, the deer attracted to music, the insect attracted to light, and the fish attracted to bait. The stronger takeaway here is that for each of these creatures or insects, one sense gets them towards trouble and being extinguished. What then will happen to humans where we have all 5 senses, and all 5 senses are so strong that they can overpower us and take us away from spirituality? There's certainly a lot of danger ahead. So that is the scriptural reference over here. Chapter 2, verse 68, catchphrase is buckled bridle. We know bridle is used to, restrain a horse, put it around the head and neck. Just like we want to rein in our senses, we want to be buckled. And so if we have our intellect that is purified by spiritual knowledge, then the senses can be restrained. And then there is no chance for the intellect to be swayed away by what the material world or the senses provide as distractions. Chapter 2, verse 69, catchphrase here, a cricket reference, day-night match. Here it's talking about, of course, the length in a way, so there's the day and the night, but also match in terms of a competition between the interpretation of day and night. Swamiji has a very funny anecdote and story in the commentary that you all can read about how not to literally interpret this verse by the terms day and night. Instead, what is used as day for a materially minded person is where they can enjoy the pleasures of the senses. And that instead is viewed as the night for a sage. And in contrast, what is considered as the night for a materially minded person is in fact that time of introspection and spiritual progress for a sage. Again, not that physical meaning of day and night, but really the spiritual sense. So that's here, chapter 2, verse 69. Chapter 2, verse 70, it's a question here, disturbed by desires. We, of course, certainly do not want to be disturbed by desires. So Sri Krishna gives the analogy of the ocean. The ocean, Swamiji says in the commentary, is extremely unique in that it is not disturbed, even though all the different rivers are incessantly flowing and merging into it. The ocean remains as it is, and likewise, sages of steady wisdom, they do use material objects, but they do not get moved. They do not get distracted by them. So that is something that we all try to aspire towards. Chapter 2, verse 71, the catchphrase here is proprietor of perfect peace. Interestingly or ironically, we've used the word proprietor here, but really in a spiritual sense. You do want to seek and have that perfect peace, but materially, we do not want to be considered as proprietors. In fact, we learn here from Sri Krishna that there are 4 things to avoid: material desires, greed, and then ego and proprietorship. Swamiji says that material desires lead to greed and anger. Greed, instead, look at the opposite. One of the biggest treasures of life is the wealth of contentment. Ego, again, we seek to instead be humble. We do not want to nurture or increase one's pride. And finally, proprietorship. We all came empty-handed. We will exit empty-handed. And regardless, everything belongs to God. So, as I mentioned with the catchphrase, we truly want to just seek that proprietorship of perfect peace, spiritual attainment. Final verse, concluding verse of chapter 2, verse 72, divine destination, the supreme abode of God. We saw a couple of weeks ago that when one has the soul and the heart purified by spiritual knowledge, God bestows his divine grace upon that soul. And at the same time, we now learn also that the soul gets liberated from the clutches of Maya. I encourage everyone to look at Swamiji's extensive commentary, where he talks about some important terminology, a lot of kars and shas, so sanchit karmas, toshas, kleshas, koshas, all that is explained by Swamiji. And in essence, what we learn here is that with spiritual knowledge, the soul and heart are purified. We get God's divine grace, which is, remember, divine knowledge, divine bliss, and divine love. And when all that happens, then the soul is united with God and remains that way. And Maya can never then overcome or overpower that soul again. So that brings us to the end in terms of explanation of these 7 verses, chapter 2, verse 66 through chapter 2, verse 72. To cap it off, we shall listen to their rendition one more time.
Nasti buddhir ayuktasya, na chayuktasya bhavana, na cha bhavayata shantihi, ashantasya kutah sukham. Indriyanam hi charatam, yanmano nu vidhiyate, tadasya harati prajnam, vayurnavam ivambhasi. Tasmad yasya mahabaho, nigrihitani sarvashah, indriyanindriyarthebhyah, tasya prajna pratisthita. Ya nisha sarvabhutanam, tasyam jagarti sanyami, yasyam jagrati bhutani, sa nisha pashyato munehe. Apuremanam achala pratishtham, samudram apah pravishanti yadvat, tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve, sashantim apnoti na kamakami. Vihaya kamanyayah sarvan, pumansharati nisprahaha, nirmamo nirahankaraha, sashantim adhigacchati. Esha brahmi sthitif partha, nainam prapya vimuhyati, sthitva syam antakalepi, brahma nirvanam richati. and we will do the closing prayer. Om Tat Sad Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjun Samvade Sankhya Yogo Nama Dvitiyo Adhyayah Sarvam Shri Krishna Arpanamastu Harihi Om. Radhe Radhe. So that completes chapter 2. Hope you all make use of the recap video to revise and practice the verses. Over to you, Gagan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mummy. It's been a great journey for chapter 2, and we look forward to the onward journey. We'll see what's in store, but same time, same place next week, Saturday, 18th February 2023, 11 a.m. Central Time in Dallas, Texas, 10:30 p.m. in India. Also, as a reminder, we mentioned a few times, please do look at the description for the video to access the JKYog community portal page. That's where you'll get the slides, the recap videos, and other useful references, as well as announcements on a regular basis about each week's class. So please do sign up and register there. It's all free. Do want to encourage you to have access to the most up-to-date information. Regardless, Saturday next week, we do look forward again. So hopefully, in fact, a little before recitation, we'll meet you for Bhagavad Gita study. That is, in fact, progressing to chapter 7. We just ended chapter 6 today. So 8 a.m. Central Time, 7:30 p.m. India time. And then 3 hours later, this series, recitation, 11 a.m. Central Time, 10:30 p.m. India time. Looking forward also to wonderful Mahashivratri celebrations. Happy journey spiritually. Radhe Radhe. Thank you.
Radhe Radhe.